Mrs. Coffee Crisp and Bag Milk. I would miss Dunkin' Donuts, or the Tim's, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Conquest is her debut middle grade novel, which is what we're officially here for. She is in conversation today with Jill Pantozzi. I said that right, didn't I?
You did.
Good. She's the editor of io9.com. If you don't know what that is, you should go look at it. She's known in the entertainment industry as the Nerdy Bird, which is an awesome title. Previously, she was editor-in-chief of the Mary Sue, and she's written for Hit Fix at Uprocks, MTV, Tor.com, Playboy, Publishers Weekly, Sci-Fi Wire, IGN, etc. You can keep up with Jill and her cats on Twitter at Jill Pantozzi. Send the questions you have in on the chat function, and they will pick them up and do it at the end of the show. And that's all I really need to do. Take it away, folks.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jill. Thanks so much for being here. I feel like we've done a million of these together over like the last 6 or 7 years, and it's always a blast to talk with you. So thanks.
I am happy to be here, and I miss you so much. So it's
oh
nice
my
to be able to, like,
gosh,
see your face outside of Twitter and Instagram.
I know, it's still kind of virtual, but not really. We were just talking about how normally this weekend we'd be hanging out together for real at New York Comic Con, and how much of a bummer it is that we're still not back to convention life or real life at all right now. Really, I really do miss cons.
Yeah, it's been a while. I think the last convention I did go to was New York Comic Con last year.
Yeah.
Most of my work, I'm like doing home base work now, and my staff goes out and does the actual reporting. Thank goodness, giving me a break. But last year New York Comic Con was the last big thing for me personally. What about you?
Mine too. Yeah. And it's funny because I took 2019 mostly off from conventions. I did San Diego, and that was pretty much it last year because I was writing a lot. I had a bunch of books come out this year, so I was working, and I was like, that's okay. I have all these books coming out in 2020, and I'm going to travel so much. I'm going to so many conventions, like so many events, it's amazing. So I'm going to like not travel this year. And then of course this happened. So now it's been like 2 years since I've done the traditional con circuit. And it's like, at first I was like, oh good, I'll like have a normal sleep schedule for once. But now I'm like, no, I really miss it. There's nothing like interacting with like your friends, but also with like fans and new people you've never met, and like other people who are into the same stuff you're into, and meeting new people and all this. Like, it's such a unique environment, and there's nothing, we try with things like this, but it's just, it's not quite the same.
It's not quite the same. I mean, I miss hugs from my
friends.
Man,
totally. I was actually just looking at a picture of us from New York Comic Con a few years ago where you're dressed up as Batgirl.
The medieval one?
The medieval one, medieval Batgirl. Yes, totally. I was like, oh, it feels like yesterday, but also feels like 10 years ago.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yes. Now I'm thinking like, oh, am I going to get dressed up for Halloween and just sit in my apartment and watch scary movies?
That's pretty much it. My birthday is next month, and I'm like, I don't really know what to do. And with these book launches, it's been like, how do you make that feel special? It's kind of been like, Papa, champagne or whatever. Like, I don't know. It's definitely been a strange year. I mean, we're very fortunate. We have not been ill.
Sure.
And we're both still working. And so that's
actually, great. I was going to ask, do you find yourself, because I do you find yourself working more?
Way more.
Yeah.
Way more. Because it's like the only thing, it's like, well, what else am I going to do? So then I take on way more projects, or like I'm working all the time because there's nothing to break it up. But I feel like that's been backfiring. Like, I have a lot of back pain now because I've been like been sitting like this for like 8 straight months now, like on my couch. But I'm turning 32 now. Like, I can't, need an ergonomic like desktop or something.
You gotta do those stretches. You gotta make sure you're moving around.
I need to drink water. Like,
my God.
I'm really terrible at it.
I'm a few years older than you, and water is all I drink now, which is something I never thought would happen. But I am suddenly dehydrated constantly, which is just something that happens.
Same. And I feel like when I turned 30, I was like, this is fine. But like every year I get further into 30,
aggressively,
like more things start. I start like, I was saying this online the other day, but it feels like all the things that I used to take for granted that just happened, like they don't just happen anymore. You need to like help them happen. Like my hair started falling out, and I have to like put some stuff, and my nails started splitting, and so I have to like take care of that. Like my back hurts. I'm like, oh man, if I don't start taking care of myself, because I'm like a nerd. I'm a traditional nerd. I like to sit on my couch 24 hours a day.
Because we can tell by your headset.
Yeah, I have my pro gamer headphones on, but like I don't go for runs. Like, man, I need to start
movement.
I don't know, man.
I tell people I'm just like a hermit, you know,
like
same.
I know.
I'm happy to watch like a bunch of TV, stream, or
what have you been watching in quarantine?
Oh my goodness.
Tell me about your binges.
I just finished Raised by Wolves, which is that like Ridley Scott produced sci-fi thing, which I wasn't a fan of, which disappointed me. I really wanted to like it. It looks very pretty. The actors are great, but the story just really dragged on.
Bummer.
Very unfortunate. By the like, no spoilers, but by the end, I was waiting for like something to kind of
happen,
cohesively come together, and it didn't.
Oh darn!
Yeah. But I like to watch something non-nerdy, like something that I definitely won't have to write about for work every once in a while. So I binged the older series Black Sails, which
I keep needing to watch that because I know I love it.
Good.
I need to watch it.
Extremely gay, which my friends had told me about, and I was like, I don't know. First one, a couple episodes, all right, some girls kiss, okay, whatever. But then, like, as it went along, I was like, oh, it's gay. Like, it's
great.
Gay. So I definitely highly recommend it.
I love gay pirates. I have like a gay pirate book coming out next year. That's great.
Perfect. I did not plan that.
Works out great. I just binged all of *Halt and Catch Fire* for the first time.
I love that show.
Wow. Did I sleep on that show? I'm like, I still have a hangover from it. Like, I can't watch anything else yet because I was affected by it like deeply.
The end is, again, no spoilers, but the end is just like such a emotional, experience.
It's like perfect. Mm-hmm. And how rare it is that shows A, get to end at all, like in a conclusive way, and B, have like a very satisfying ending. So that show is so good. So now I too am doing that thing where I watch something that's like intense or like in our wheelhouse, and now I'm binging 36 episodes of Love Island.
Oh my goodness.
For example. No sync, which is great.
Yeah.
So great. In a very unique way, but it's great that we are talking about Conquest on the weekend of New York City Comic Con, or what would have been our con weekend traditionally, because I feel like this is what we get out of a con. Really, it's funny because there's a ton of programming and you go to great panels and all this stuff, but for me, the real value of conventions lies in like the connections you make with people, like whether you knew them before or not. And yeah, I do feel like that's what I'm missing out on the most, because like this is fine, but there's people here watching, and like if we were at a convention, we could like hang out with them.
Yeah, like,
or like talk to them,
and
or at
I love
a party
that
or whatever, in line or sitting next to each other when we're both gonna go watch the same thing and we don't know each other, but we know we both like this thing, so now we're instantly friends. There's that like connection aspect that I think is missing from the online panel version of all these cons.
It's tough. We're getting into, I wouldn't even say it's a groove yet, because there's only been a few sort of virtual cons, but I think it'll be interesting to see how things evolve, even if people next year, I don't know when of course everything's still up in the air, but when we do start going back to in-person cons, are some of these conventions going to try and incorporate a more virtual aspect? Because like we've said, so many people, it's a big expense to go to conventions out of state, out of country for some people.
It's impossible.
If you're doing cosplay, that's a big expense. All these other things that could prevent you from going, and just be able to have a few of these things online makes it so much more accessible for people.
I completely agree. That is the one huge benefit to doing all this online, is like I helped out organizing Y'all West this year, and like there were almost 100,000 people who watched those panels, when normally you get a fraction of that in person, which is great. It would be amazing if all these conventions made all their panels available digitally at the same time for like a lower price or something.
Yeah, some sort of pay-per-view kind of deal. I thought that for years, even before that.
Totally. because you're right, like I could not afford to go to these conventions if someone wasn't sending me to them for free. Like that's how I can go. It's cost prohibitive, travel prohibitive, like it can be really, really difficult unless the con is like in your town and they make it accessible, you know?
Right.
So
That's
luckily
funny.
though, most cities now do have conventions, even smaller ones, which
That's
is
true.
great. So if you've never been to one before, you can, once all this is over, look up, you know, in your area and find your local one, because they can be a great place to start if you've never been to like a huge con like New
Right.
York Comic Con before, which can be very intimidating, in
I was
fairness.
gonna
Find it
say, I know
intimidating.
we've both been to some like smaller cons earlier on in our career. What do you like? What do you remember from before you were? I think I can call you famous.
Oh my God.
Like, you know, before you were really like doing stuff online and you were just going as a fan. Like, what do you remember from those days?
Well, I like your loose definition of famous. It works for me really well. So thank you. I I mean, so yeah, I attended cons as a fan for years and years and years before I started doing them professionally. And I just remember the first time I went to like, so my first con was a fandom specific con. I was 18. I went to a Stargate convention, only Stargate. And I remember what stuck with me most about it was for months before that convention on the like Stargate fan forums, we had like a thread that was for all the people who were going. And so I talked to all the women because Stargate fans are like 99% middle-aged women, which is so great. But I would talk to all these women on the forums for months and months beforehand. And then we all congregated in Vancouver that weekend. And it was people from like New Zealand and Germany and France and all across Canada and America. And I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, these are like real friends. Like I've been talking to these people for ages and now we're meeting in person and they're real friends. And this was almost 15 years ago. And we all still meet in Vancouver every 2 years for the same con. And so I've been friends with these people for 15 years that I never would have met otherwise. And that really struck me as like, oh, this is like real. Like the friends you make in fandom at conventions are like real. Because I think we both grew up during a time when like meeting people online from the internet was very like stranger danger. Now it's crazy to not meet someone you haven't talked to online first, which is a bonkers like reversal of how things used to be. But so that really stuck out was like, oh, I have like real connections with the other people who like the thing that I like we can be real genuine friends. And then the first con I went to was Toronto Fan Expo in like 2012, I want to say, when they were still a little bit smaller. Even the big cons were still a little bit smaller. And I remember being wowed by the sheer magnitude of it. Like Artist Alley, all these vendors, all these signature stations and panels and photo ops, and just being like very overwhelmed with choice and like stuff. But for me, still, I think my favorite cons honestly are the smaller ones. Like my favorite con is the Toronto Comic Arts Festival, which takes place every May in the Toronto Reference Library, which is a public library. It's a completely free convention. Anyone can go all weekend. And the only exhibitors are comic artists and writers. So there's like traditionally published ones like Random House as a Table or whatever, but mostly it's completely independent webcomic and independent like zine and comic writers and artists. And it's amazing. And you just get to go and walk around this library for a couple hours and see all these independent artists and buy directly from them, and it's free. And it's like, that's like a core con experience to me. Yeah. Do you have like a favorite? Yeah.
There's one like that in New York, Mocha Fest.
Oh, I would love to go to that one day. Oh,
and it's basically the exact same thing that you mentioned. And for a couple of years, I don't remember where it was last year, but it was in like one of the old like army buildings in New York.
Oh,
like
cool.
So it's like a really interesting like structural place to have a convention too, outside of like a convention center. And yeah, it's the same kind of thing, like, you know, meeting web comic folks and, you know, getting sketches from people you never probably would have gotten sketches from anywhere else, you know, and then buying these really interesting, like artsy things too, like, you know, little figures or little framed things that people make that are just like so much more unique and that you might not even see at one of the larger cons.
People ask me all the time too, like, what's your favorite part of conventions and all that stuff, and it's always Artist Alley. Like, I think the panels are amazing, and I've sat through some panels that I just was like, I need to sit down, or like I want to be in a room for a while. I don't care what this is about, and have come out like a huge fan of whatever like random thing that was, because the people on stage are so captivating, and you're like, I discovered a new thing. So like that's great. And you know, like the big panels, the stars are cool, like you get to geek out. But Artist Alley's like there is not a single piece of art in my house, I think, that is not from an Artist Alley. Yeah. You know, like there's just so much talent, and not only art, but like you say, like sculptures and jewelry and, oh my gosh, all kinds of cool stuff. Glasses, like drinking glasses, and like face glasses even I've seen, and like just everything you could possibly imagine. And for everyone, like not just one, like anime and video game, like there's a little bit of everything, which is very cool. And man, like I don't know what to get anyone for Christmas this year.
I know, because
like all my stuff usually comes from like, I went to Santa Fe to a con and I brought you back this cool art thing, and now I'm like, I guess I'll go to Lowe's. Like I literally don't know what I'm gonna do. Like,
it's funny.
Yeah.
There's also like so much more these days in fandom in general. Like you were mentioning Stargate convention. My first one was a Star Trek specific convention.
Love it.
Yeah. And it was such a like an eye-opening experience. You know, obviously everyone was in costume, and you know, Brent Spiner was on stage with Armin Shimmerman, just like kind of chatting it out and breaking into song every once in a while. And I'm like, this is magical, you know? Yeah. But the thing that I remember most is going into like their little vendor area and just being like, well, this is all kind of like old stuff, you know, old action figures of all the past series, and people just like, you know, reselling things that had already been out there. And now from that time, which I don't know, maybe it was like 2006 to now, like the difference is just amazing with how much companies that have created themselves during the last few years and other people kind of picking up the thread, like, oh, actually there's like big business in fandom, and like the fact that I can buy, you know, Star Trek jewelry from like Rock Love now, or like t-shirts of stuff from her universe, and like having that kind of thing, plus all these like more indie creators that are coming up, it's just like a dream come true.
Oh yeah, it used to be, that's such a good point that I kind of forgot about, but you're right, it used to be all like memorabilia resale, which you still see a little bit of at cons, but like that used to be all of it. But now it's mostly like original art, fan art, or like folks, like you say, like Espionage Cosmetics, or like Dual Wheel Studios, or these places that get the license and make it legit, or fan artists, like mostly fan artists, but like, yeah, it's extremely cool. And it's just like, I don't know, when we were younger, it was so niche, and now nerd culture is pop culture, which I think is cool. I think it's very cool, but it has like blossomed so much that I feel like you're right that the mainstream is still almost like struggling to catch up with that a little bit. I remember, it's funny, I was talking to a game studio today. It was like a job interview, and they were like, what we really want is for people to dress up as the characters from our game at like a convention. And I was like, that's amazing. That's so great. Like, that's exactly what I want to hear. Cause I once worked at a studio where they were like, we want our game to be unmemeable. We don't want anyone to be able to make a meme of our game. And I was like, y'all don't get it. Like, you want everyone to be making a meme of your game. Like, that's how you know it's popular. Like, you want everyone to be dressing up, and like, it's slow, but I feel like there is this embracing of like fan culture now, which I like.
Yeah. We were obviously talking about where we would have been this time of year. What do you normally do to like prep for a convention? Like, what do you take? What do you pack? How do you mentally prepare?
This is such a good question. So I wrote this like entire book basically that has a whole chapter about like preparing for cons well, and like budgeting and making your list and all that stuff. I don't do any of that. I like do not take my own advice at all. I'm a garbage person. No, but normally the one thing I do have to do is I sit down and I have to make a like I get my schedule together. So I'm like, okay, I have all these panels on this day. And then that night I have to go to like events XYZ, and the next morning I have to be up here. So I have my schedule, and then I sit down, and I'm not a stylish person. I spend most of my
look at Sam.
Thank you. I spend most of my life in an oversized t-shirts and spandex bike shorts, which, by the way, I noticed before this panel I've been wearing inside out this entire day. That's like me traditionally, right?
Work from home living.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing, and I've always been this way with fashion. I like kind of struggle with it. So I have to sit down and write out all my things, and then I have to plan out all my outfits because I'm so like. I find that very challenging.
Well, you also can't take too much, you know.
And you can't take too much. You have to get pieces that work with like multiple outfits. And then at cons, like people are taking pictures all the time of like panels, and you don't want to be like dressed in something they take a picture and you can see you're through it all of a sudden. And like you have to like test stuff, like sit down in a chair and be like, so I plan out all my outfits and write everything down that I need to take, including like toiletries and my hair stuff and everything. I make a list. I'm a big list person, and then I check all the stuff off as I put it in the suitcase. I also am a big fan of, oh my gosh, it's been so long since I've traveled now, TSA pre-check.
Oh.
Yeah, I have a Nexus Pass, which is this thing you can get if you travel a lot between Canada and the US or US and Mexico.
Gotcha.
Basically like a fast border pass. And having that, you don't pay for that, but it gives you automatic TSA pre-check permanently.
That's good.
It's like amazing. So I'm like, I highly recommend investing in pre-check or Nexus if you can do that, because it makes airports like a breeze. So those two things. And then I try to look at my schedule compared to like the con schedule to see if there's anything I can fit in like between responsibilities that I have. Like if I want to see XYZ, I'll try to like squeeze it in. Knowing of course that there's like an extreme amount of travel time between any point A and any point B at a convention center. So you have to like allow for that, and time to eat and pee, which I have forgotten in the past.
I was gonna say, I always pack myself granola bars and then wind up not eating them anyway.
Yes, totally. Bag full of like fruit snacks that I've never touched. Again, a water bottle I never touch, like terrible. And then I'll try to, I always make it to Artist Alley. So I always like carve out time. So I'll check the Artist Alley list and see if there's anyone that I like definitely want to see. Yeah. And then I'll bring like fruit snacks and stuff that I won't eat.
What I try to do with Artist Alley is go very early on the first day, kind of like my pass, see what I'm gonna, want.
Scope it out.
And then if there's someone like I want to get a commission from, you got to get that early so they have time over the weekend to do it. Then you go back on Sunday and you pick up your commissions maybe, and then pick up like all the other little things you saw, because like you're gonna wind up spending money on the show for itself too.
Yeah.
So like you want to make sure you still have money left over and whatever. So that's definitely something I do. Of course, hand sanitizer. I did that before all of what was going on.
Oh, see, I never did that. I'm going to be like so good about that now.
Credit itself is a
real
thing. Like
so real. Yeah, that's what I like to do on the like Wednesday or whatever the like preview night is, or even like in some places like Toronto Fan Expo, it's the Thursday afternoon or whatever. I try to do like, because usually that's the slowest day, like professionally. Maybe you have like one thing or no things. I try to do the whole floor. Like I try to make it from end to end of any floor, so that for that exact reason, it's not as busy, so you can maybe even like do stuff, scope out things you want to buy, and just if things get like so busy that you can say you saw everything, because by the time Saturday afternoon rolls around, like Saturdays are nightmare demon days at conventions, and I would not recommend being on the floor at all on a Saturday. And B, by Sunday you're like, I'm so tired. I can't stay upright anymore. Like, so it's good to like get that out of the way.
I don't cosplay anymore these days, but when I did and I was traveling to conventions, my biggest tip, if there's any cosplayers watching, is to make sure you put all your costume pieces in your carry-on, because if your luggage gets lost, you can't replace that. You can't replace your costume. You can replace your regular clothes. You can't replace the costume.
Have you
So
ever had
that
your
thing-
luggage lost on the way to a con? Has that ever happened
Thankfully,
to
I
you?
have not. No. I did get one time where it was late, like I got it,
Yeah.
whatever, and so it didn't get to the hotel until like the next day.
Oh my God.
But yes, that is a very, very important thing.
That's such good advice. The worst convention luggage experience I ever had was I was at, oh my gosh, I don't even remember what convention it was. It doesn't even matter. I was at some convention and I flew home, and 2 days later we were moving from Canada to America. It was like the 2 days before we were moving to LA permanently. So I had my suitcase full of stuff, which was like great because this is basically what I'm going to live out of for the next month while I try to find an apartment in a new country. I don't even have a bank account, like whatever. And I got off the plane in Canada and they had lost my luggage, and I had 2 days, and it was literally the morning that we were moving to the States. It made it back to that airport. Cause I was like, if I get on the flight and go to LA, like, is it my suitcase gonna stay in Canada forever? Like, it was like the most stressful. Anyway, carry on. After that, I invested in a good quality carry-on suitcase and have been attempting to do carry-on to conventions ever since, which again necessitates the planning of what you will pack. Because I'm the kind of person that like I would just put every single outfit and pair of shoes that I have into a bag and be like, oh, worry about later. Like if I could.
One San Diego Comic-Con, I remember I went a little overboard on buying exclusives and other things there.
No such thing.
I realized I did not have the room in my luggage, right? So I'm like, well, I don't want to like stuff it and then have to pay an extra $50 or whatever it is. So it so happened that I had a friend whose husband worked for FedEx, and FedEx has an actual like setup in the convention building there. And so I had to mail like a bunch back. Including swords that I used for cosplay, which at that point I was like, I can't deal with it on the plane. So
no way.
Send it back that way. Luckily that worked out too, because if that had gotten lost, it would have been irreplaceable.
Oh my God, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I've only ever been to one other con that has a FedEx in it, and it was BookCon. It was actually at the Javits, and you get so many books that you have to ship them home because you can't put them in your luggage. I was very
that's smart,
shocked and delighted by this discovery.
So we've talked about all these things we like doing at cons. What do you not like to do at cons? What do you avoid?
This is a great question. So much. Well, I avoid the floor on Saturdays. Like we already talked about that. That's like a pretty hard and fast rule with me, it's so busy that I don't find it enjoyable. I just get really stressed out having that many like
too many people
bodies around. Yeah, so I don't do that. I don't do a lot of photo ops anymore. I used to really be into photo ops, but I'm kind of like photo ops and autographs. I don't do that so much anymore. I enjoy the like experience more than those kinds of souvenirs. I would rather spend the money on like Artist Alley souvenirs and stuff, but I do love going to like celebrity panels. I still like find a lot of value in that. So that's cool. Whereas the photo op, I found that I got a lot of them and they just like sit in a folder and I never really look at them, and they happen so fast that you don't get a lot of like memory value out of it.
I was going to say, I just learned that. I did my first one last year.
Yeah.
New York Comic Con. I did it with David Tennant because I had, so, in our careers, we get to interview people all the time and people are very jealous, but it's like, well, it's not, you have to be professional. You're not, fanning out when you're with them. So
externally.
Yes. So, time had gone by and I'm like, I don't think, it's going to be a while before David Tennant's in something again that I might be able to get interview him for. So I said, let me just, I'll splurge, I'll do it, and like, I got in there, I was smiling up at him, beaming, at his adorable face. And I was just like, oh, thank you so much for doing this, and then we like turned, took the shot. He, shook my hand, and then they basically pushed you out the door. And I was like, oh, wow. Like,
it's like 5 seconds max.
Yes.
At least in an autograph, you can get like maybe 30
a little talk,
to a minute, but like it's fast and they're expensive.
Very expensive.
Yeah.
But if it's somebody that you like truly, truly have loved for like years and years and years, even if you get to like them, it's worth it. Yeah.
So I don't do that so much anymore, but I have done that, and it is super fun. And I still will do that for occasions like that. Like, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I also sort of avoid, to be honest, anything with like a massive line. I just like can't be arsed anymore, if I'm being totally honest with you. I like, there's nothing that I want to stand in line for like 8 to 16 hours for.
No, I cannot.
Maybe that's bad, but like,
no, I mean, you know, and some people, it's tough to get into some of these, you know, and again, if you are traveling a far distance and this is the thing you are truly passionate about,
yes,
it's worth it for you, you know, as long as you're staying healthy, you're not, you know, making yourself sick or anything, being in an outside area perhaps for that long. That's fine. But yeah, I definitely, I can't do that anymore. The thing that I tend to avoid now is like, and you know, they have to do it because these events are growing and growing, but off-site events, not do, because it's like, well, everything else is here. I'm going to take like how long to actually get to the next thing, which is like blocks and blocks away.
Totally.
And then try to make it back. It's just, it's like too much.
Which is a shame, because sometimes some of the coolest stuff is off-site, but it's just like, especially when we're talking about like a New York Comic-Con or a San Diego Comic-Con, where traveling 4 feet can take you an hour. It's like just trying to leave the convention center is like a gauntlet sometimes, that like it has to be really worth it for me to even like attempt it. It's it's tough, but there is such cool stuff offsite. I will say that the evening stuff offsite,
that's a little different.
Is a little different, but even then, when I take my shoes off at 6 p.m., it's like getting progressively more difficult to convince myself to put them boots back on and get out to totally honest. Like, and I don't know, again, if this is just because I'm getting older, and maybe if I was still 25, I would be like very gung-ho about it. But I will say that I never did an overnight line sleep. I never did do that. But I admire the people who can do it. I actually have snuck into Hall H on several different occasions. I put that into Conquest. They sneak into Hall H in a way that I previously have snuck into Hall H for real in the book, and nobody noticed. Because I just don't do that at home, kids.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we're not
we do not condone breaking the rules at conventions. However, I did get to see some fun panels. So.
Do you have like just like a moment that really stands out as just a great thing from a con that you'll never forget?
Yeah, this is like such an easy question for me. So I was hosting the cosplay masquerade at, it was Calgary Expo. It was Calgary Expo. It was a few years ago now. And they always start the masquerade. The first half an hour is the children's portion. So the kids come out in their costumes and get to like show them off. Everybody wins. You know, it's cute. Yeah. And I remember a little girl came on stage. She was dressed as like a dinosaur, and her dad was with her. She was maybe like 2 or 3. And I was like, I bent down to be like, oh, you're a dinosaur. You're so cute. And she took my microphone and she started babbling away into the mic. She was like, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, you should host. You're great. Like, and she just kept talking. And the dad looked thrilled. And she was so cute that eventually she like gave the mic back. And I was like, that's really cool. Thanks so much. And she left, and it was like a cute moment. And we found out the next day that she is autistic and had never vocalized before.
Oh my goodness.
So it was I feel incredibly lucky to have been a part of that moment. And they cut together a little video of it and stuff that's still up on like
so
the
they have that like
thing.
nice little memory.
Yeah, totally. So it was really special. It was pretty, magic happens at conventions. That's the thing. It's
Forget
pretty cool.
about Disney, you know.
Yeah, like real stuff. It was it was cool. What about you?
Oh my goodness. I have so when I was doing cosplay, it was San Diego, and this was during the 2nd season of Game of Thrones, right?
Okay, when it was still good.
Hype was huge, yes.
Huge,
right? So you know there's going to be cosplay everywhere, but I said, I have an idea. I'm going to do cosplay of Daenerys as she's eating the bloody horse heart, right? From that epic episode. And at that point, nobody had done it yet. I believe I was the first. and got this, fake heart, got all the fake blood.
I remember this costume.
Me.
Yeah.
It was sticky as anything. It was terrible. I couldn't use my phone. One of my friends was having to like make tweets for me. It was ridiculous. But it was great. And everybody kept stopping me. Oh my God, it's so great. I love it. I love it. And then I was up in where like kind of the autograph line section was. And I was just passing through because there was like good light to take pictures there. And then I see that George R. Martin is signing books, right? And I'm like, oh, and I didn't want to like, the line was huge, obviously. And you had to like, be already, you had the book and, everything. So I knew I was yeah. So I just kind of stood off to the side so that I could like wave to him and just be like, hey, and sure enough, he looked over at one point, he saw me and he stopped, he put down his pen, he got up and he walked over to me so that we could take a picture together. It was amazing.
That's so great. Yeah, oh my gosh.
This is fabulous. I love this. And I was like, thank you. It's all worth it.
That's the kind of con stuff I'm here for. I love that. It's so funny hearing you talk about how big Game of Thrones was. I wrote the Fangirls Guide to the Galaxy. It came out in 2015, which I think was around that time, like Game of Thrones season 2. And we're re-releasing a second edition this year, which you are in as well. You have an interview in it, which is amazing. Thank you. Fangirls Guide to the Universe. It comes out at the end of this month. And I had the opportunity to go through and edit the whole book and take out lots of references to people who have since been outed as sexual abusers, for example. And
that's smart. Not a lot of people think to do that sort of thing.
Outdated cultural references and stuff. And can I tell you, I would say like 1 in 4 pop culture references in that book were Game of Thrones related. Wow. Like that's how, and I cut most everywhere. Of them because nobody cares about it anymore, obviously. Yeah. But like, as I was reading through it, I was like, oh man, this was like all encompassing at that time. Like, yeah.
Everywhere.
And now nowhere.
I mean, we talk about this at work all the time, but I've never seen something go from here like
the cultural impact
so
of that
fast.
show is nothing.
And then people just forgetting about it. And I'm really interested to see, because they're going to do like a prequel eventually, HBO. And I just want to know if like people if they'll get the hype back, or people are just like, you know what, forget it. I'm done, moved on to other things.
I just feel like they tanked it.
Yeah.
It's wild. It's so interesting. It's fascinating to me.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, speaking of Game of Thrones, I went to an event, and this was for a press thing, so it was like, I knew I was gonna be interviewing people and this and that.
Yeah.
And I got to speak to Pedro Pascal there,
who we both love.
Oh, just amazing, an amazing man, like a human, like amazing human. But we were talking, and I brought up something, and I said, I'm from the Mary Sue, and he goes, oh, I've read the Mary Sue. And it was one of those moments in my career where I actually was flustered and I had to like collect myself. Normally I'm really good about that kind of thing, but it was like, oh, he just said he read the site that I run. Like, oh, wow.
That was like the opposite moment that I had with Stephen Moffat.
Oh no. Oh, that's right.
To hear this, and he was like, all those misleading headlines you write at the Mary Sue. And I was like, you say that stuff, bro. You just write the words that you say, homie.
I remember going back after you told me that. I'm like, what could he be talking about? And I look back, I'm like, no, he said that. No, he said that.
He says all those things. I was like, that was the moment where I was like, I made it. Yeah. I felt so good. What a dick.
Oh my God. Are there other people like that you haven't gotten to meet yet at a convention? Obviously that's the most, obvious place it would happen, but like, is there anyone you still want to meet?
Oh, I would love to meet Pedro Pascal. That's a big one. I would love to meet Natalie Dormer, like a huge fan of hers. That would be very cool. Gosh, Oscar Isaac would be huge. I would love that. I don't do a lot of interviewing anymore is the thing. So my opportunities for like celebrity schmoozing have decreased dramatically compared to yours, I would say. You still get the cool chats. I don't get that.
Not as much because I'm like, the editor of a site now that I am too busy to actually like write.
Do the, yeah.
Like I had to write a post the other day and I was like, how do write? I don't remember.
Yeah.
But yeah, mine would be Patrick Stewart. Sir Patrick
Stewart. Great one.
One day, hopefully.
That's the gold.
Because he's just like an icon.
My big one was Matt Smith for a really long time because he's my doctor, and I got to interview him at Edmonton Expo a couple years ago. I think it was last year, maybe a year and a half ago, and he complimented me on my shoes, which was big because he does have very great style. So
he's very fashionable. Yes, I've seen him in person a few times. My goodness, he is just like.
I was thrilled about that. He was so nice. Like, love when they end up being nice. We got a great question actually for Andrew. Hi, Andrew. You come to everything I do, and I'm very grateful. I would like to say that to you. After attending so many cons, do you get con fatigue, and would you still attend so many if you weren't being sent there?
So I think the most that I did in 1 year, and this was years ago, was 5 cons. And that for me was like, never again.
Yeah.
It was just way too much, like maybe like, I mean, these days, like I said, I'm a hermit. So like 1 a year is good for me. I don't want to travel. I'm fine going to my home convention and that's about it. But yeah, like what I would love one day, I'd like to keep my job. Thank you very much. But someday when I don't have to go for work, I would like to do that again because it's a completely different experience.
Yes. I completely agree. I looked it up while you were talking, and in 2018 I did 18 events, either cons or bookstore events. And I was working a full-time job. I was working full-time at the same time. So taking time out of PTO basically to go to these events, which meant I didn't have any actual time off because my work time off was spent working essentially, because unfortunately the cons are work, right? And that's when I maxed out. I found myself at the end of 2018 noticing that I would go to cons. Like I very distinctly remember being at Phoenix Comic-Con, and I'd never been to Arizona before. And I spent the entirety of the convention when I wasn't in the convention center in my hotel room alone watching the Great British Bake Off. I watched probably like 4 seasons of Bake Off alone in my hotel room that weekend, which I could easily have been doing at home. And I remember being like, oh, I'm not grateful for this anymore. Like I found myself not being grateful for the opportunity to be somewhere on somebody else's dime in a city that I've never been, experiencing a convention I've never been to. I was just like, I'm over this. I'm exhausted. I'm working what essentially amounted to like 2 jobs, if not more. And I was just like, if I can't appreciate doing it, I need to stop doing it until I can appreciate it again. And that's why I ended up taking 2019 off, because I was like, if I do this, I want to be grateful for the opportunity and not feeling like I'm just there out of like a rote sense of this is what I do, and I say the thing and I come back. So
you're too busy of a person generally, so I understand why you would feel that way.
Yeah.
I mean, you write so much, Sam. It's ridiculous.
I have no work-life balance. I don't have any hobbies. I'm ill all the time.
You're very prolific. Obviously, Conquest. That's what we want to talk about, because it's super exciting. It's about everything we've been discussing. It might seem obvious where you got the idea from for this type of book, but like, was there something specific that sparked it?
The folks at Imprint came to me. They actually approached me and were like, we really want to make a book about 2 twins at a Comic-Con. We know you have a ton of experience with cons. We think you'd be a good person to take it on. And I was like, yes, I know so much about cons. But I was actually able to fuse my experience attending Comic-Cons with my experience doing Gishwez, which is the big international scavenger hunt that Misha Collins from Supernatural runs. I don't think they do it anymore. I'm not sure.
They did something this year, but
yeah, it's like this week-long worldwide scavenger hunt where they put up all these like bananas things you have to do for charity. And I did it in 2017, I think, and it was like, I will never do it again in my life, but it was a really fun and like totally bonkers experience. So I was like, I'll fuse these 2 things. And the con in Conquest is based on San Diego Comic-Con, location wise, but the stuff they do at the con is influenced from stuff that's happened to me at conventions all over the world. So it was an easy thing to put together, frankly. I had lots of experience to draw on, and I hope that comes through like authentically in the book, because it does all come from my like authentic experience as a con goer. Andrew wanted to know, when you mentioned how cons are different when you work them versus when you're attending them, can you give some like, can you delve into that a little bit deeper?
Well, the thing that comes to mind, because I only really did the single Star Trek convention and then one other before I was like doing my blog sort of like full time, was actually the first New York Comic Con.
Oh.
It was in 2007, right? And it was at the same place. It was at the Javits, but they didn't have the whole building yet because they didn't know how big it was going to be. I got dressed up as Jill Valentine from the Resident Evil games.
Right.
My poor mother drove me into the city from New Jersey, right? This is like, you know, a pretty annoying drive.
Yeah.
Dropped me off. Okay, see you later. Let me know when you want to come home. I get out. I have my ticket already. I go in and they're like, the fire marshal shut it down. You can't come in. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? Like, I came from another state to be here. I'm dressed up, and they're like, they're not letting anyone else in. I'm like, but what if people leave? And they're like, no, it is shut down. And I was just like, oh my God. So I'm sitting there like just in the general area before anything, you know, inside, can't even see anything, right? Because it's one of like the lower levels. I have to call my poor mother back. She hadn't even gotten home yet. Mom, please turn back. You have to. And I'm starting to cry, right? Because I'm such a big baby. And I'm on the phone, and some random person comes up to me and like compliments my hair. And I'm literally on the phone crying. I'm like, thanks. Like, something's happening here. Please don't bother me, you know? So she wound up having to come back. I got back in the car and went right back home. Couldn't even experience it.
Oh, Jill.
It was dramatic. Absolutely dramatic. Of course, they like, you know, I emailed them or whatever, and they comped the ticket and they gave me a one for the next year and all that. So it was all smoothed over there, but it was just such a, I'm going to do this great thing and I'm so excited. And then womp womp.
That's brutal. I mean, I feel like the big difference is like, it's going to something for fun versus going to something for work, essentially, where like, if you're going to a con for fun, you get to plan the whole weekend out the way like anybody would. You get to be like, I want to go to XYZ. I can't wait to see this panel and this. And if you don't feel like doing something, you could just not do it, or you can change your mind, or you can go wander around, and you're really free to like enjoy the convention as like a fan. Because if you're going to work, even though there are things that you can spend some time doing, that like your primary focus is working. And I know for me as an introvert, like I find it incredibly draining to work a con weekend, because you're on pretty much from the second you step onto the con floor, where there may be people coming up to you. Like, you are very recognizable. I'm somewhat recognizable. Like, people coming up to you being like, I love your work, and you want to engage with them really genuinely. And then I'll have an hour signing at one booth, during which I have to be very engaged with people, and then assigning another booth. And then I'll maybe have 20 minutes to run from one end of the floor to another to get to a panel where I again have to be like on. And even when you're not talking, active listening, as we all know from Zoom now, is very exhausting. Like, engaged, knowing that people are filming or taking photos of you at all times. So constantly wanting to appear presentable and watching what you say all the time, lest you end up on some image board where people send you death threats or whatever. Like, you are just constantly on the whole day, and maybe you'll get like an hour free, but during that hour you also kind of want to like sit in a corner in silence. This is maybe me anyway, because I feel very overstimulated, and also I don't talk to anyone during a normal day. So that amount of like effort
it's and like from here to here
is huge and exhausting. And then you go back to your room at 5. You're lucky if you have like an hour, and then you have all your evening stuff, and then you're doing that same thing all and evening,
trying to eat something in between,
trying to eat, trying to go to the washroom, trying to see friends you actually want to see, but then by the time you see them, you're like too tired to actually interact with them. So it's just like, for me, it's like fun versus a weekend of being like very on, which is really hard for me. I fake it really well, I think, but I it's very challenging for me.
I would just like to say, like I've said many times, Sam is very prolific. She writes everything. Is there anything before we sort of head off here that you can tease that's coming up besides Conquest?
Yeah, totally. So Conquest is out now. You can pick it up. But also next week, I have the first volume. I adapted Rainbow Rowell's Fangirl YA novel into a 4-volume manga. The first manga volume is out on the 13th, so a week from yesterday. So you pick that up. And at the end of the month, on October 27th, the Fangirls Guide to the Universe, featuring the lovely Jill Pantozzi, and the Fangirls Journal for Leveling Up, its companion self-guided journal, are also out. And in February, Tell No Tales, my first original graphic novel, co-created by Kendra Wells, is coming out. It is about lesbian pirates. So
this lady,
if you like that. So yeah, pick that stuff up. And also, please read IO9, because Jill has absolutely transformed that site in her time there. It is like the bastion of sci-fi news on the internet, and she's a genius.
Thank you.
I mean,
so I think that's it from us. Dwayne, do you want to take back over?
Thank you. It's been fun. I deliberately mute myself so I don't feel the urge to kibitz about con life. It's interesting to hear from your point of view. Remind everyone on the line that we have Conquest at sale at the store. You can buy it on our site. You get a special book plate if you do. And you should definitely check out IO9, which I admit I'm just as bad at not watching, but it's more because I spend all day on sites when I do that. Thanks to everybody for coming, and Sam and Jill, it's really nice to talk to you. I hope to actually physically meet you in person, not too far off.
Let's do it. Let's make it happen. Thank you, Dwayne, and thank you, Jill. So good to see you, buddy.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye, guys.